Today, I really appreciate you hearing my request. I have introduced House Res 57. These are articles of impeachment on President Biden for abuse of power in regards to his willingness to use his position of power to aid his son, Hunter Biden, and their business dealings. I've also introduced another article of impeachment on President Biden, which is HRES 597. This has to do with the national security crisis that President Biden has created with regards to the extreme threat at the southern border. I've introduced House Res 598, articles of impeachment on President Biden in regards to the failure in Afghanistan. And I've introduced House Res 596, articles of impeachment on President Biden for the COVID eviction moratorium and his willingness to use his position to try to do what he shouldn't be doing. We have three branches of power. Now, this is not an issue that is just important to me. This is an issue that's important to the American people. You see, the American people in polling just recently, there's a range between 60% of Americans that say that Joe Biden should be impeached, but it goes as high as 83% of Republicans think President Biden deserves to be impeached, 58% of independents, and 40% of Democrats agreeing that President Biden should be impeached for his failures to the American people as president. Let's talk about some of those failures. We can talk about the border alone. You see, here we have, and let's just talk about criminals coming across the border. U.S. Border Patrol has apprehended 9,728 illegal aliens with criminal records just in fiscal year 2021, in comparison to only 2,438 in 2020. This is a 325.8% increase in migrant encounters. It's up to 1.7 million migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border in fiscal year 2021, which ended in September. This is a massive increase in President Biden's failures to provide security for the American people. Also, Border Patrol agents arrested 53 illegal aliens with sex-related criminal convictions, and many of them had prior convictions for crimes involving a minor. In the same period in 2020, agents apprehended 58. In 2019, they apprehended 58 in total. 55 in 2020, 58 in 2019, but 353 in 2021. That is a massive increase. Let's talk about these types of convictions. These convictions include forcible sexual assault of a child under 14, sexual conduct with a person under 13, statutory rape, second-degree sexual assault of a child, and lewd acts with a minor. Del Rio sector in Texas, they have seen 3,166% increase in arrest of convicted sex offenders compared to the same time frame last year. This is a threat to the American people, and Joe Biden is failing on his job. We could go on and on with the statistics and the numbers, but I think plenty of people have done that already. So let's talk about what is the presidential oath of office. Joe Biden swore an oath. He said, "I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States, and I will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States." And he is failing to uphold his oath. You see, Article 4, Section 4 says that the U.S. guarantees each state against invasion. Joe Biden is failing the American people by refusing to uphold the law and the Constitution. But Afghanistan is where it really hurt. You see, Article 3, Section 3, Joe Biden could be guilty of treason. Our law says that levying war against the U.S., adhering to the enemies of the U.S., and giving aid and comfort is treason. President Biden did that by arming the Taliban with our taxpayer-funded U.S. equipment and weapons. He abandoned Americans in Afghanistan and seems to have no interest in getting them back. And only worse, he failed to ignore the intel that there was going to be an ISIS bomber and 13 of our soldiers were killed. I asked this committee to bring my articles of impeachment forward in hearings and markup, and I thank you.
Object. 2 years ago, I authored bipartisan legislation sanctioning any company that participated in building Nord Stream 2. That legislation passed Congress overwhelmingly, and Democrats and Republicans overwhelmingly supported it. That was passed on the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act. A year ago, I authored a second set of bipartisan sanctions on Nord Stream 2. That second set of bipartisan sanctions, again, passed overwhelmingly with the support of Democrats and Republicans in this chamber. That second set of bipartisan sanctions likewise passed on the National Defense Authorization Act. Today, the Democrats are objecting to passing sanctions on Nord Stream 2. What has changed? Two things have changed, Madam President. Number one, today Joe Biden is president and not Donald Trump. And the Democrats were more than willing to stand up to Russia when Donald Trump was president. But when Joe Biden is president, suddenly it is untenable for Democrats to stand up to Russia. But secondly, it's even worse, because what has also changed is that Joe Biden has utterly and completely capitulated to Vladimir Putin. He has waived the mandatory sanctions that this body passed. He has given a multi-billion-dollar generational gift to Putin. This strengthens Russia. Decades from now, successor dictators in Russia will reap billions of dollars they will use for military aggression against Europe, against America, and it will be because Joe Biden utterly and completely capitulated. So why, Madam President, are Senate Democrats objecting to a vote on Nord Stream 2? Because they cannot defend Joe Biden's surrender to Putin on the merits. They don't want to vote on it because it would be politically inconvenient for this White House that has undermined the national security of the United States and has weakened our allies. Right now, energy prices are skyrocketing in Europe because Joe Biden surrendered to Vladimir Putin. We have twice passed Nord Stream 2 sanctions on the NDAA. After Biden's surrender to Putin, we should do so again. And my Democratic friends who've given speech after speech after speech against Nord Stream 2, against Russia, should demonstrate they mean what they say and they're not simply interested in being political protectors for a Democratic president. Accordingly, Madam President, and I would note, by the way, in response to every amendment that has been called up, the Democrats have not seen fit to provide even a word of substantive argument in response. So I'm going to predict you're not going to hear a defense of Joe Biden's surrender to Russia. You're not going to hear any defense of Nord Stream 2. You haven't heard any substantive defense. You're going to hear two words: I object, because the Democrats are afraid of taking this vote. I believe we are elected here to represent our constituents and the interest of the United States, and we should have the courage to do so. Therefore, I ask to modify the request to include Amendment 4794.
Is there objection to the motion?